Hello, I'm Captain JK. I've been flying as an airline pilot for the last 27 years, and now I'm flying Boeing 787. Today, I'd like to introduce top 10 most difficult flights out of my 27-year flying career. This will be the part 1 that contains number 10 through number 6. Number 10. 2012 A330 Bali as a captain. I was coming into Bali, Indonesia. They have a single runway with a single ILS approach. To the other side of the runway, there's a non-precision approach called RNP approach. You know, ILS approach is always the right answer for the airline operations. It's easier to shoot and more precise, so it's safer. But today, no options but RNP approach is available. And that's not an issue of the day. As we approached, we found that there was a huge thunderstorm on the opposite side of the runway. Since it looked almost stationary, we were clear for the approach from the other side. Problem was, in the case that we had to go around during landing flare, we might end up being in the thunderstorm cloud. My first officer at the moment, who was from England, said,
"Captain, please do not fail to land. If we go around late, we're all dead."
Oh my goodness, the situation was so stressful because we only got one chance of landing. Without that thunderstorm, it would have been nothing but a simple non-precision approach. The cloud ahead of us kept flashing while we were on the approach, and it was just red on the ND, which means that it was the most dangerous level of cloud. It looked super terrifying. Even though I was so nervous, I was not able to do an auto land. If not an ILS approach, landing should be made manually. Finally, we landed safely on the runway. For me, I've never used a glove on my controlling hand because my hands are always dry. But on that day, my left hand ended up being soaked with sweat. Number 9. 2002 A330 Jeju as a first officer. I had a couple of domestic flights on that day. A Canadian captain who was one of my close friends gave me the option to choose which one to land. So I chose the last one, which was coming into Jeju at night, followed by a layover. The weather at Jeju wasn't bad in the daytime. After we took off from Seoul Gimpo for the last flight of the day, I was kind of surprised at the new weather at Jeju. There was a light rain and the wind was horrible and terrifying. Every airplane has its limitations for crosswind or tailwind. Wind at Jeju at the time was just marginal for crosswind limit. Around 30 minutes before landing, I started my approach briefing as a pilot flying. My voice had no confidence, but the captain said nothing to me. I always try to convince myself, like, I can do this. But as a kind of inexperienced pilot, I was nervous quite a bit. As we started the approach, the ride was really terrible. My heart started to tumble. When I told the captain to lower the landing gear, he asked me a short question. "Hey, JK, are you okay?" Yes, sir. I was not okay, actually. How would a baby pilot like me be okay under the weather like that? But I trusted my captain would back me up as he trusted me. My landing was beautifully done, fortunately. Wow, you did a great job. Really, I'm impressed. That was one of my great assets to become a captain. Captain Hodgins, sir, I was so grateful to you for trusting me. I still clearly remember you, and I'm missing you. Number 8. 1998 MD-80 Sapporo as a first officer. That was just routine day flight coming back from Sapporo, Japan. Due to strong jet stream in winter, flight time was more than 3 hours, I remember. I was a PF on the way back. After we took off, I tried to engage the autopilot as usual, but autopilot was not working at all. So we requested a level flight in order to do troubleshooting, but to no avail. If the same thing happened now, we definitely should have returned. Because due to a different airspace structure, autopilot is now mandatory. What do you think we did at the moment? Yes, we decided to fly manually all the way to Seoul. Okay, JK, listen. This is going to be a very difficult flight. We should fly in turns, 30 minutes each. You may want to know why fly in turns. Manual flying at 37,000 feet is totally different than flying at 3,000 feet. You may have heard that air density becomes sparse as we climb. So the amount of control input required to maintain the altitude changes dramatically. It is very, very sensitive up there. When we arrived at Seoul, I and the captain were completely exhausted. Number 7. 2003 A330 Guam as a first officer. Departure time is 8:30 p.m. and I was about to leave home.
This is OCC, please stay at home because a tropical storm is approaching to Guam. So,
Huh? Are they going to cancel my flight? Yes.
the flight will be delayed by 5 hours.
What? Jesus Christ, it's got even worse.
And your captain will be changed to Captain Hong.
Wow, great. It is now the worst. I had never flown with Captain Hong by that time, but there were no first officers who didn't know him. You know what it means. Yes, he was kind of number one in the fleet. Due to bad weather, OCC decided to send one of the most experienced captains. They said the storm would have been past by the time we get there. Yes, the storm was gone, but its tail was long. Rain was pouring on short final, wind was blowing crazy. Even the captain was flying, and he was very experienced. That was so terrifying. There was nothing for me to do but praying. The landing was not beautiful, but there was no scratch on the airplane. We were safe. Number 6. 2018, Manchester as a captain. I used to work in one of the Chinese airlines for 2 years. During my flight training, which is called OE, Operations Experience, I went to Manchester Airport for a 50% progress check. Since I'd flown the same airplane before I joined that company, I expected that the training would be easy enough. But it took quite a short time that I realized my guessing was totally wrong. There were pretty many differences here and there in flight procedures. First, in Korea, pilots turn on the weather radar just before takeoff. Day or night, doesn't matter. When I took off from Beijing, it was midnight. So I turned on the weather radar as I did in Korea. The Chinese check pilot started yelling from there.
Why the hell do you turn on the radar? Huh? Do you see the stars? Do you see the lights on the ground?
I said, yes.
That's the weather radar, okay? Turn it off.
I was thinking, what the heck is he talking about? Now, I don't know if they have changed or not, but in those days, almost all the Chinese pilots were thinking that the use of weather radar would be lethal to pilots. Because he was so dead set on it, I, as a pilot being checked, had no choice but follow his ridiculous rule. And I turned it back on right after he went out for his rest. We somehow landed safely at Manchester International Airport. And it was my first time being there, and the taxiways there are very, very complicated. So I absolutely needed to look at the taxi chart for safe taxiing. Even at the airport that is familiar with, pilots have to double check with the taxi chart for safe ground operations. But that check pilot started yelling again. What are you looking at now? You're supposed to see outside while taxiing. Why see inside? Why see the iPad? I stayed in Manchester for 2 days, and I did nothing but memorizing the whole taxi chart of Beijing for the flight coming back. This one. Because I knew he will not let me see the taxi chart while taxiing. If I did that again, he would have failed me on the check ride. Captains study taxi chart with first officers before they start taxiing, and pilots never memorize the charts. Sometimes a chart could be implanted in the brain automatically. Like me, Incheon Airport is clearly recorded in my brain. But we always open the chart, and anytime when in doubt, we refer to the chart. This is the safety of operation. Okay, I've introduced top 10 worst experiences during flight part 1. I hope you enjoyed, and please revisit for the part 2. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. I'm Captain JK.